All right. Hello, everybody. Let me share this. No, not that. All right. We are back. We haven't done a live chat in a while. Hey guys. We're just sharing the link over here on Facebook. Whoops. There we go. Nope. Oh, now I gotta find the link. Is it this? Share? Sorry. There we go. All right. Posting. All righty. Close that. Here we are. Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome back. It is Friday, January 30th, end of the month already. My name is Leah McDermott. I am your host of the Friday Live Chats. I am also the head of school at Bridge Academy and the founder of Bridge Academy and Your Natural Learner. And today's topic is finding a good routine. We'll just come out of that. And I hesitated to do this. So just so you know, the topics that I teach every week, I choose them based on what I'm seeing the needs of in my community, specifically from within Bridge Academy. So when parents are asking the same questions, people are having generally the same concerns or problems, or the questions that come in advance that are submitted have kind of the same ring to them. I choose from that, and you'd be amazed at how often people kind of are going through the same thing at the same time. So people have been asking questions about routines for some time, all month basically. And normally at the beginning of the year, I will lead a workshop on routines. I didn't do it this year. And the reason that I did not do that is because I think that I'm trying to find the best way to say this. Let's talk about why this happens first. Okay. So, why is it that so many families right around this time of year feel like they're living in chaos? Like they don't have any control, there's no routine, there's no rhythm, they're not getting any curriculum done if they're home. Like, remember, most of my families are homeschoolers, right? They're not getting anything done. There's just no traction. Like everything just feels out of whack, out of sync. Why is that happening? And there are very specific reasons as to why that's happening. And so I want to address what those reasons are, and that will help you understand why I chose not to lead a workshop this year, or this at the beginning of the school year or calendar year. And then we'll get into I'm going to help you out with this. All right. I'm going to help you find these better routines today. And we're going to make it a Cliff Notes version. So there's a couple of reasons this happens. So first of all, we have to remember that humans are always changing. Okay. So we tend to, as a society, follow the general rhythm of our school year. That could be trauma response. It could be Stockholm syndrome. It could just be the way it is that, generally speaking, even families that are fully unschooling, self-directed, natural learning, we tend to create some new routines or feel the need to do that right at the start of the school year or at the end of summer, which is, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, right? It's mostly who I'm talking to right now. Around like August, September, right? And again, homeschoolers, while we are growing, are still a minority. So the majority of marketing and conversation and overall societal planning shifts at the end of summer, and we start with these new rhythms and these new routines and these new schedules and new curriculum and new everything right at the beginning of the school year. And every 6 months or so, as humans tend to just like change and evolve. And that's especially true for children. Now, that's going to be unique for every person, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that today. No, I do need that. I chose not to even mess with like hair and makeup today. So I'm trying to find the light that makes me look less like the zombie. I've traveled like thousands of miles and many, many hours in the last week. So I look like a zombie. Oh, anyway, you're here for the learning, not because I look pretty, right? Okay. So we tend to set these new routines, for better or worse, at the start of the school year. And then every 6 months or so, something needs to change. And it just so happens that January, February tends to fall at that time when we are naturally sort of seeking some kind of change anyway, us, our kids, our families in general. We also are dealing with a new calendar year and post holiday. So the post holiday is the big one. So, right. Okay. So why are we feeling like routines are a mess right now? Number one, because we've hit that like mid-year mark of the school year. Okay. Number two is the holidays are over. And no matter how much effort you put into like making sure the holidays don't disrupt your family flow, it is a battle that is not won, right? Because everyone around us is it's the holidays are just a time of delightful chaos. And I usually encourage people to lean all the way into it unless it affects them very negatively. But coming out of that is really hard. And if the way you try to come out of it is to go right back to the way things were before, then you've got these conflicting ideas of things like you're already at that point of like, even if the holiday chaos hadn't happened, you're at that like 6 month mark anyway. So you already are probably in need of a new routine or an adjustment. And then you've got post holiday and you're trying to like go back to this old routine that didn't really fit you anyway. And that just creates even more like chaos. And really, ultimately, it feels like failure because you probably were already feeling like that routine wasn't really working anymore. And then you added holiday onto it. And now you're like trying to go back to something that didn't really feel great anyway. And it's just going to make you feel just like worse, which just creates even more chaos. And then we have what I have deemed probably the biggest problem, which is the just over consumerism and marketing push at the beginning of a calendar year that is designed intentionally to make you feel like you are failing at everything in your life so that you will buy the new product, the new course, the new program, the new vitamin, the new whatever curriculum planner, that something is going to magically fix all of these problems that you're already feeling just because of the time of year that it is. And it's the middle of the winter when you shouldn't really be setting goals anyway. My car is parked on like a half a foot of ice that they still haven't shoveled in our community yet. Like, this is not the time to be like, I'm going to do new things and try new things. No, this is the time to really like go inward, hibernate. How am I feeling? What am I interested in? How are the kids feeling? What are they interested in? This is a wonderful, natural time to be adjusting these routines and rhythms, figuring out all those little things, not trying to like fix it all and not trying to go back. And so that's ultimately the reason that I chose not to even market my routines workshop at the beginning of the year, because I didn't want anyone to feel like they were broken and needed that to solve their problems. Now, everything that I'm going to teach you today is pulled out of, it's like the very short Cliff Notes version of my Aligned Homeschool Routines workshop. And that workshop has been developed. I just taught it last year, like 6 months ago. It was completely renewed. It was built out of an old routines workshop that I had. It is everything that I have learned about creating a family rhythm through 15 years of research and development and working with families all around the world of all types and ages and diversities and everything. I do firmly believe that it is one of the best things that you can go through and utilize as a tool to create healthy rhythms for your family, not just now, but forever, because as I'm going to tell you, It is always changing. This is work that you should be doing consistently because we are individuals, and every individual, there is no such thing as a routine that is going to work for everyone. There's no such thing as a diet that will work for everyone, a curriculum that will work for every child. We know this. We are living in a wonderful time in humanity where we've realized this one size fits all stuff, it's just not true. It's not real. And we are here because we believe that to be true about education for our children, but it's much, much deeper than that. One curriculum, one rhythm, one routine, one schedule, one diet, one everything. It's never going to work because each family unit is unique. All of our circumstances are unique, and each individual in the family is unique. And we have to be constantly evaluating that. And I'm going to give you some examples from my family too as we go through this. But we have to be constantly looking at that. And this workshop and what I'll teach you today. Now, you could walk away. What I teach you today are like the biggest points. So you could just watch this today, really dive into it, and that could be all that you need. But if you are someone that's like, wow, this is really interesting, I want to learn more, I want worksheets, I want all of this stuff, then you need to get the Aligned Homeschool Routines Workshop. Now, if you're a Bridge Academy family, it's free for you. It's inside the portal. You just log into your portal, go to the parent learning section, and it is in there. It's a 3-part, maybe a 4-part. I don't remember now, 3 or 4-part series, but there's printables with it. Everything is in there. And if you're not a Bridge Academy family, you should consider joining us because it's pretty great over there. And we're about to open enrollment for next school year. You could still join for this school year, but we're March 1st. We'll be opening for next year. Anyway, if you don't want to do that, you can just buy the workshop by itself, and I'll throw that in the show notes after I'm done here. Okay. So this is something that you should be doing every 6 months, minimum every 6 months. I recommend every quarter. And here's what happens too, is you can utilize these points and you can dive really, really deep. Like if you get into the workshop, you'll see it's very, very deep. Like it could take you a month to kind of like work through all the little nuances and intricacies. But the thing is, once you've done that, and then you come back to it maybe in 3 months or 6 months, and then you do it again and do it again, eventually you start to notice all of these little things that clue you in on changes, because it's not going to be exactly every 6 months. Ding, 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 ding. Alarms go off around around your house and you have to change your routine, right? These are things that you'll start to notice, and you can make subtle changes much more regularly based on what you're noticing. Now, the one example I'm going to give you here that I think is so great is my middle son. Everything about who he is shifts based on where we are in the soccer season every year. That is his whole world. And so everything about his needs and his connection, everything I'm going to talk about today, all of that changes for him based on where we are in the soccer season. And so because I've paid such close attention to all of these things, because I've learned about them and clued in on them, and I have that observation always happening with everyone in my family, adults too, by the way, me, my husband, everybody that's in the family has these things. Your needs don't disappear when you become an adult. I can make those subtle changes in our routines and our rhythms that are just for him, that don't negatively affect anyone. In fact, it makes everything better, because when we're aware of each individual, we can make those little changes. And when each individual is taken care of, the family unit is taken care of. So, for example, everything, the way that he eats changes, the times that he wants to eat change, whether it's a lull in the season or he's, deep in the season, if it's the tournament time of the season where he's playing a lot more, if he's pre-practice or like once a week practice, twice a week, 3 times a week, even like the level of communication that he has with me, like if there's a part of the year where, or like right now, actually, there's a part of the year where he is not practicing with his team because they're on a break in between seasons, but there's a lot going on in the world of professional soccer that he is constantly doing like analysis and data and wants to ask questions and talk about it. There's the time, and that's where we are right now. There's lots of big changes happening, like trades and transfers and tournaments that are leading up to getting to like big deals. So this is a time of year where his sleep schedule is a little different. He's staying up a little later and sleeping in a little more because he doesn't have to be up for practices or go out for practices. His body's not as tired because he's not putting as much physical output out. He's not eating quite as much because he's not putting as much energy out until like next month when practices start. But his brain is going, 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 going. So he needs more time individually with me to talk all of these things out. He has more connection points than a month from now when he is going to practice twice a week. There's going to be a lot less time that he desires my individual attention because he's doing other things that are prioritized. And if I wasn't aware of any of that, even the simple things like his sleep schedule shifting a little bit, if I was forcing a different sleep schedule on him, what kind of resistance would I be having? And like, that's before I even started any of this, the most beautiful thing about embracing the uniqueness of your family and the individuals in it, the best part of that is realizing all of the rest of the noise is irrelevant. I can do that. I can feed my kids dinner at 10 p.m. if that's when they're hungry. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. We can stay up till 1 and sleep till 11. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. What matters is that what we are doing is working best for the health and happiness of our individual family. And throughout the year, that's going to shift and change. And I can pay attention to that. But being able to just not worry about all of the opinions of other people and the internet and every marketing, everything else we're seeing, that's the best part. Okay. All right, let's dive into this. So there's 3 pillars of a good routine. And then I will get to the end. At the end, I'll go to questions. I'll try to get through questions that you guys submit while we're live, but I did have some good questions submitted from my Bridge families in advance, most of which are related to routines. So good. Okay, 3 pillars that you need to know about good routines. Number 1 is needs. Number 2 is flow. And number 3 is learning. And they are prioritized in that order: needs, flow, learning. And I know you might think that since I'm a homeschool account, I would be talking about learning first, but we're going to talk about why that's actually last. Okay, so let's look at number 1 first. The first step to defining a good routine is identifying core needs. Now, I want you to think about a tree. All right. And inside the workshop, we use a nice graphic of a tree. So I want you to think about all of the parts of a tree, and we're going to break it into 4 parts. At the bottom is the roots of the tree. That is safety and security. All right. So underground, the firm foundation of that tree is the safety and security needs. And we'll get into it a little deeper in a second. Then there's the trunk of the tree, and the trunk of the tree represents connection and rhythms. Then we have the branches, that's learning, and leaves are creativity. If you do not have a solid root system, none of the rest of it even matters. Okay? If I have a tree that has a disease at the roots or bugs in the trunk, right? The 2 most important part of the trees. Everybody looks at the pretty leaves. But if I have a root disease or bugs, termites eating out the trunk of my tree, I'm not going to solve that problem by polishing and shining the leaves of the tree. So the analogy there is that if I am having a chaos problem, okay, if my home is just the best word I can describe it right now, January 30th, 30 days after the new year, I haven't really adjusted what's going on here. If chaos is the best word to describe it, you've got a problem in your roots or your trunk. And most of us will try to solve that problem by polishing our leaves, meaning we will buy new curriculum, or we'll draw up new lesson plans, or we will, I don't know, change the home classroom. And we almost always focus on what our educational trauma tells us is most important, which is forcing an education. We'll force the kids to sit down and work through the curriculum that we've chosen. Or if we've been more unschooling leaning and we're feeling chaos, we blame the wrong thing. We think, oh, it's because I'm unschooling. I knew that this was going to be a problem. I haven't made the kids do any learning this year, and now everything is chaotic. So I'm going to force it onto them. you're looking only at the branches and the leaves. Well, actually, I've said the leaves. The leaves are the creativity. That's just the flourishing part, right? That's what comes out of the learning. So we're not even looking at that. We're looking at just trying to fix the branches, but that's not where your problem is. There's rarely a problem that stems from the branches and the leaves because those are a result of healthy growth. As I don't know if any of you are like plant people, but I have plants all over my house. And the thing that helps them grow is focusing on the roots, the health of what's happening, even under the soil that we can't even see. That's when we see flourishing things. I don't pay attention to fixing leaves. Maybe I trim them, take away the ones that are not relevant, extra classes we're making them take, things they're not interested in, taking those away so that everything else can flourish. But the things that I have to adjust and change and repot and treat and pay attention to and water, all of that's happening at the soil or under it. So if you're using plants or trees as your analogy, I want you to think about the branches and the leaves are not the piece that you pay attention to. At most, you're cutting away things that are irrelevant up there so everything else can grow. But where you have to put your attention is in the foundation and the strength of what allows those things to flourish naturally. So we're looking at core needs, which come from the roots, which are safety and security, and the trunk, which is the connection and rhythm. And those are two different things. So when I say safety and security, and I talk about this again, I'm just going to try to say this one more time. Everything that I'm talking about in the next like 15, 20 minutes, I talk about for an hour each in this workshop. Okay. So if you want me to talk more, go get the workshop. It's in the parent portal. If you're a Bridge Academy family, you can buy it or you can join Bridge. Anyway, safety and security does not mean, yes, it means, okay, it does mean you have a safe home, your kids have food, the heat's on, right? It does, of course, mean basic needs, basic care, but that's kind of a given anyway. What I'm mostly talking about with safety and security is related to output regulation, emotions, sharing, building into the trunk, which is, again, the trunk is connection and rhythm. If we don't feel safe and secure, we're not going to connect and have a natural rhythm. So if we don't have good roots, we don't even have a trunk, let alone branches and leaves. Okay. How do we make sure that our kids feel safe and secure? This happens by things like, is there some predictability? And that's some rhythm too, but are you a safe person? Is your home a safe place? Meaning emotionally, are they worried or fearful that at any moment you might completely freak out because of the chaos? Does that land on them in any way? And you have to be really honest about this here. And that's a totally normal thing. And that has happened at times in my home too, right? And that's usually a sign that we got to do some adjustments. Are they worried that their learning is only performative? Does learning feel like something they have to perform? And that might not even come from you, but that might still be trauma they're holding from a previous school experience that you're still working to heal and making sure you're not repeating at home. Do they feel worried that a sibling is going to destroy something that they've created at any time? So is there like private areas these are all the kinds of questions. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going into it, but that's what I mean by safety and security. I don't mean, are there locks on the doors and do they have food to eat? Of course, those things are important, but is there emotional, mental safety and security so that they can show you the next things? Because the next part is they need to show you the trunk, which is connection and rhythm. And we're going to get into that with point number 2. So really, this is about the roots. Number 1 is the roots. All right. Identifying the core needs. So the question here to ask yourself is, what does my family need to feel safe, connected, and supported right now? And you want to do this exercise for the individual. So you can do this on a piece of paper, and you can do this quickly because you probably can come to these answers really fast if you just gut reaction. Write down the name of every person in your home on a piece of paper, and then the first thing that comes to you, write down 3 needs per person, and then as a group. So start with yourself. What are 3 things you need right now to feel safe, connected and supported. Maybe that's an hour a day where you're not in charge of somebody else. Maybe that's a change in your diet. Maybe that's drinking more water. Maybe that's going to the gym. Maybe that's prioritizing your own learning and creativity. Maybe that's a little bit of help, whatever. Then your partner or spouse or co-parent or another adult in your home. And then each of the kids, what do they need right now? And not, I don't mean what do you think they need? They need to work on math. No, that's not what I mean. The question is, what do they need to feel safe, connected, and supported? What needs to change? What is needed? And maybe you're already doing it, but that's okay. Right now, the three biggest needs for each person are what? And then you're going to look at those and see, okay, well, I can fix all of these problems by doing this one thing. Just getting it onto paper is really helpful. Okay. So that's number one, the core needs. What do we need as a family and as individuals? Those are the roots. How are we strengthening the roots of our tree? Okay, that's number one, core needs. Number two is observing natural flow. So now we've identified what we need in our roots. So now we're moving into the trunk of the tree, which is the biggest part of the tree, usually. Okay. Connection and rhythm is the trunk of the tree. And here we are looking for what I like to call touch points. Touch points are the natural moments during a day when a child or someone is seeking attention or not. Okay. So this is going to be different for every person. And it's really fun to do this. There's some fun exercises in the actual workshop here, but you can focus just on the kids. It's good to look at the adults too, but when through the day, when and where are they seeking your attention? When are they coming to you for food, for help, for questions, for a hug, for a behavior like attention seeking in a negative way? Anytime they're seeking your attention, we're going to pay attention to that. And we're going to look for some patterns. So this is work that we're going to do for a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks. When and where are you in those moments? And this is easy to do in your notepad on your phone, or keep a notebook laying around. Every time someone seeks out your attention, and it doesn't matter what the attention is. It could be a negative, it could be negative or positive. It could be a sibling fight. Okay, that's an attention seeking. That's they're seeking attention and connection in some way. If they're creating a fight with one another, that's an attention seeking, connection seeking moment. What if I notice over a week that the sibling rivalry is happening at the same time every day? What a thing to know. Because now I can say, okay, that is a time in the day when they are both clearly seeking attention, and that's become part of their rhythm. Why is that happening? An hour before that, they were hungry. Or I have spent I'm always cooking dinner at that moment. Where are you in that moment as that, firm foundation of the family? If I'm cooking dinner every time there's a sibling fight, what is that telling me? Right? These are the things we're looking for. And I'm not giving you that answer because maybe it means you need to change when you're cooking dinner. Maybe they need to be set up with something before. Maybe they need attention from another adult. There's lots of ways that these can be, things can be moved around. But this is what we're looking for. We are looking for these patterns of connection and rhythm to help us identify what that natural flow of our day is looking like if it's not touched. If we're just not trying to control anything, we're not having emotions around anything, we're just watching what's going on. If everyone's left to their own devices, what are the needs? What is the natural flow? When are they waking up? When are they tired? When are they grumpy? When are they hungry? When do they want to talk? When do they want to make something? When are they bored? And we're paying attention to that and we're looking for patterns and then we're putting all the pieces together. So here's person one's rhythm, person two's rhythm, person three, person four, and then we're going to overlay them together. And that is how you create a routine, because we don't create routines from the top. We don't look at the leaves and try to form everything under it. We start at the bottom and we build out of that. We say, okay, these are what the needs are. Here's everyone's natural rhythm and flow already. Here's the touch points. Here's the connection that everyone is seeking. And now, how do we take those needs And we take what we've learned from those, that natural rhythm, and we're going to piece that together to create a routine that is flexible, not a schedule, not, okay, everybody needs to wake up at 8 a.m. That's not what we're talking about here. We're building a routine out of these pieces of the puzzle that we've identified. And it's a lot easier than you think it is. The hard part is getting the information. That's the hardest part, is being able to say, okay, I'm not going to come at this with judgment on myself or my children or my family or anything. I'm purely going to step back and come at this from, like, I think the first thing I say in that workshop is, you are data scientists at this point. That's all you're coming in here to do, is observe, how am I feeling? What are the kids feeling? What's happening? What needs to, what's going on? Because then you can sit down and it might be something so simple like, whoa, the biggest problem here is we're going to that once a week homeschool co-op and that's messing everybody up. Or, wow, we are trying to force this reading time every day and that's creating an issue. We should be doing it earlier, letting them do it on their own. Or I've put these two kids' toys in the same room and that's creating it. Like, it almost always is something really simple that can just be tweaked or moved or shifted or adjusted or canceled, that will change everything for the better. But if we're not paying attention to these subtleties, these little ways that everybody's showing those needs, we would never identify it. And you have to remember that kids, especially up to at least the age of 12, explaining why they're feeling and doing what they're feeling and doing is near impossible. So you can't just sit down. If you have a home that's just adults, it's you and a co-parent and a 16-year-old teenager, sure, great. You guys can just sit down and bang this out pretty quickly together, right? You can just say, all right, here's my 3 big needs. What are yours? What are yours? Here's what I need in a day. Let's come together and figure this out. But for most of us, that's not where we are. Most of the people watching this are not in that. Many of you have a newborn baby. Okay, well, those needs are going to be all day. That baby's going to have needs, but you're still going to find a rhythm and a routine, and it's going to be changing really frequently. We have multiple siblings. We have lots of young kids. And, I was talking to someone yesterday, and this mom told me that she feels like she's just been in a constant state of transition for months. And we're all kind of that way. The world is really crazy right now, and information is almost too available. So it's really hard to say, I'm only going to focus right here, right now, because if we allow the chaos of everything else to affect how we're parenting, we're actually adding to the world's chaos. The best thing we can do for the world, really, I believe, is control what we have control over, right? Fix what we have control over. You work inside your home to create healthy routines and rhythms, build connection, build emotional regulation and safety and security and learning and creativity. That ripples out into the world through our children. And that is a very powerful thing that we can control in a world that feels very out of control. But it also really helps us just in that day-to-day. So that's points 1 and 2. We're building rhythms then and routines around these natural movements. All right. Now, the third part is adding learning in naturally. And this is the cool part. And it's like, this is what people get so stressed out about. Like, everybody that comes to me wanting to homeschool or unschool or lean into self-directed learning when they're just getting started, they want to jump right to point 3. They just want to control the learning and the creativity part. And you can't. The creativity part you can't control at all. The leaves are not controllable by outside forces. Okay? Whether you can do everything you want to a plant, and the blooming of that plant is out of your control. That plant only blooms and blossoms if it wants to, if all of the other elements work just right. The leaves, the creativity, you have no control over that. You can nurture that, but you cannot control that. Okay? The branches, the learning, that you are cultivating. Will this be saved? Yes. And it's on YouTube always. If you have to go. Yes. The learning pieces, you're just adding as support, right? You're culling, you're cultivating, like we said at the beginning, right? I have a big tree in my backyard that I have to have. It grows out of control very often, and I have to have somebody come out regularly and prune the branches. But it's every time it happens, I'm like excited because I get like a refresher on all of this that we teach at Bridge and at Your Natural Learner, because that's the fun part, is like this learning, because we've put so much energy into the roots and into the trunk, the health of the foundation of this tree. It's blossoming almost out of control, to the point where the only thing I actually have to do to it is come in and take away the things that are holding it back. And I don't even need to explain what that analogy is. When you think about your kids, when you focus on their roots and their branches, or their roots and their trunk, and everything is healthy underneath, those branches are going to happen. And the only part you really have to do is just keep cultivating and provide it with the resources. Watch the creativity and the leaves and the blossoms come in and take away the parts that are holding it back. So there's not a lot to do in this last step. And I think that's what's so hard for parents who feel like there's something to do. I have to do something. My kid's not learning. My kid's not engaging. My kid isn't trying. They're not interested in anything. The branches aren't the problem then. The trunk or the roots have to be addressed. There's not a lot to do in this third part. You have to go back and make sure your foundation is strong, because the branches and leaves are going to grow on their own based out of how much effort you've put into the other parts. Really, the work to be done here is your constant reframing of what learning looks like. When you build out that natural rhythm, when you focus on those other parts, we're allowing our kids to show those interests. And at that point, then the doing is cultivating. When you see the interests that your kids have, when you understand their needs, then we can bring in elements that support them. Okay. And maybe that's going to be so independent that I'm not going to talk about it right now, because it would just take time. And I like keeping these around 30 minutes. So and there is more in the workshop about this. It isn't literally, there's nothing you can do here. There are things you can do to add in, specific activities, ways to capture your kids' interest. I'm also going to recommend, if you have not yet watched, the 4-part series that I did called What's Wrong with School. It's free. It's on my YouTube channel. Especially towards the end of that series, like parts 3 and 4, I definitely recommend taking the time to watch all of it. But parts 3 and 4 really get into like the questions that people start to have around this level, which are like, my kid's not interested in anything. I am open and ready to show them anything they need, and they're not showing me that, or they still have school trauma, therefore they don't want to talk about anything or learn anything. And I go into a lot of depth there too about how to like help heal that, how to combat that, how to seek those interests out, how to plan based on what their needs might be for the future. There's lots more resources for that. So I'll link that down below too. And if you're watching elsewhere, it's just on my YouTube channel. It's 4-part series, What's Wrong with School. All of it very useful. I would watch all 4 of them, but those last 2 parts especially are very helpful. So just remember that routines are ever changing. All right. You're going to go do all this work, and 4 months from now, something's going to stop working. And that's just, you're going to have to go back to it. But the beauty is that the more you go back to it, the easier it becomes. Just like I said, you start to notice those intricacies of each human in your family, yourself included. And that's a big part of it. And I say that a lot in the workshop too, which is that you have to remember to put the adults in the factor. If all we're doing is pointing out the things that need to change for our kids, but we're never prioritizing our needs, we're just going to hit burnout and then resentment. And that just makes it all worse. Is there a link available for the workshop? So if you are a Bridge Academy family, the Aligned Homeschool Routines workshop is already in the parent learning section of the portal. If not, I will put a link I'll share it in my stories, and I'll put it on YouTube. The What's Wrong with School series is already free on YouTube. Okay. And then the last point, and I mentioned this already, is that the whole point of this today is that we're building routines from the bottom up. Routines do not start at the top. You can't say, I want to have because the leaves, the creativity, I didn't touch that. That part you have no control over, none, zero. That is the artistry, the musical talent, the coding, and the everything that they come out with on their own, all of the creative things that happens when all the other elements are taken care of. Okay. And if you want to make some changes, you can't just say, oh, look at these leaves, I have to do something about these leaves. You can't do that. You can't force creativity. That's like forcing your child to be a musical prodigy by making them take piano lessons and they hate it or something. You just can't do that. It's just not the way it works. That's not how it works. You cannot start at the top. So you cannot fix your routine and chaos problem by changing your curriculum. You can't do it. It's not going to work. You have to start at the bottom. Okay. If your leaves and your branches are not looking the way you want them to, if your kids are not engaging, if everybody's fighting, if there's nothing predictable, if everything feels chaotic, you got to go down, 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 down. You got to go down to the roots. Then you got to go to the trunk and everything will start to change. And also remember that another analogy, and then I'll get into questions. When you identify a problem with the tree, with the roots, with the trunk, even when you go fix it, if I treat the infection or the fungus, if I get all the termites out of the trunk, the next morning I'm not going to wake up and have beautiful branches and leaves. I have to wait. I have to take time. It's going to take time for there to be changes, for there to be healing. And I have to be patient. And if we can be patient with a tree, we can be patient with our family and with our children. So understanding that time is the biggest factor here. Yes, we can make some changes. We can identify those changes, and some of it will happen right away, but some of it will take time, especially if we're dealing with former types of trauma. So again, both of the other workshops I talked about are really helpful there. All right. So I had 3 questions come in from Bridge families, and I think they're all related roughly to rhythms and routines. So let's see if they answer themselves. Okay, question 1. How much should I expect my kids to keep to a morning rhythm of play, breakfast, then getting ready for the day, including working on dishes with me? Every step of the way, it feels like I have to hold their hand despite having done the same thing for over a year, and I know they are capable. They're 7 and 5 years old. Okay, this is the only time I wish that I could have like a live chat with other people in it, because I would just love for someone to say, like, this is such a great exercise. I'm going to save this question for like a future version of the workshop. If this is what you've noticed, all right, I want you to imagine that you're doing this workshop right now, and you're coming to me with, every day we're doing the same things. I'm letting them play, then we're having breakfast, then they have to help me do the dishes. And every single day it is a struggle. Every single day it's like they've never heard me do it, even though we've been doing the same thing. Where is the disconnect? And I can't really answer that for you, because this is going to be so unique, and you're going to have to get into the nitty-gritty of it. I'm going to make a guess just based on statistics of having dealt with this before. I'm going to guess that they are waking up and their first thing that you're letting them do is play. And then one way or another, that play is getting interrupted. And therefore, everything after that interrupted play is feeling stressful to the children. Play is the most important thing a child can do, especially at 5 and 7 years old. Is it wonderful that you're teaching them how to load dishes? Sure, of course it is. Life skills are important. The most important thing your 5 and 7-year-old can do is play, period. So here and now, you have to ask yourself, are they actually hungry when I'm feeding them breakfast? Am I timing that play? Or maybe I'm wrong, I'm making an assumption. Maybe that play, it comes to a lull and then you do these other things. But this is where I would really look. Okay, if you are hitting resistance every day, something is wrong, and it's not your fault. And it's not, the kids are just at 5 and 7. They're not just like resisting dishes. They're not being manipulative. They're 5 and 7. They probably just want to keep playing. So how could you adjust this? Maybe if the goal is, I want to teach them the life skills of doing the dishes, maybe that happens later in the day. Maybe there's a better time in the day when they're seeking something to do. They're naturally not playing in that moment. They're not hungry. They haven't just eaten. And they would be more receptive to doing tasks like that. Maybe it's because they're doing it together. Maybe individual tasks are better. Are they seeking individual attention in those moments? These are the questions we have to look at. We could force this routine. Yeah, does it seem like a big deal to an adult? No, they should be able to play, eat breakfast, and do the dishes with me. That should be an easy thing. But it isn't. It isn't an easy thing, especially I have a 5-year-old. If I was making my 5-year-old help me do the dishes every morning, I'm telling you, he wakes up ready to go and play for hours on end. He would not want to stop. And he loves to help do things around the house. He wouldn't give up his morning playtime for it. In the evening, he would definitely want to do that because that's when he's kind of burned himself out on his personal independent play and he seeks a lot of connection. So that's where we have to start looking. These are the little pieces that we're looking at. All right. Watch the rest of the day. If you are focused, and this sounds like it's a mom need. Okay. I need a solid, healthy, get ready for the day, fresh start every morning. That doesn't mean that the kids need that. If you need that, how can you take that while they are playing? And again, I'm speculating here, but these are the kinds of questions we kind of have to ask ourselves of why is this feeling like a struggle? Okay. This is the same parent. So let's see. How do I know if the activities we do are too many? There's more here, but I'm going to say gut reaction. If you ask, is this too much? It's probably too much, but let's keep going. They do love all of them and do most of them together: BMX, swim lessons, karate class, and the 5-year-old plays drums. Several days are completely empty until karate in the evening, so we have time to do whatever. I just find we never end up getting to the many things they have expressed desire to do because they just end up wanting to play, which I allow, and then fitting time at the gym for myself in as well. And sometimes I feel like I would be taking too much time to do that for me, but I know it'd be wise to feel myself. How do I reconcile all of this? You've got to get into this workshop. All right. You are asking, every question you're asking right now will be solved when you sit down and say, okay, so I have identified your 3 needs immediately through these questions. You need a solid get start morning routine. You need time to go to the gym for yourself, right? And I don't know what your third one might be, but I can identify immediately those 2 things. You have to do those things for yourself. All right. So then what we're identifying is what else what are the kids' needs? Play. Sounds like they need play. And here's the thing. If they love those activities, that's great. But at 5 and 7 years old, that doesn't mean that they need to be doing all of those things. It would be okay. And you probably know in your gut, like which one of those things is taking a little bit too much of our energy. It's if they are like seeking extra play more than maybe they normally would, it's probably a compensation. They're looking for more opportunity to play because it's being taken away for whatever these other things might be. So, a 5-year-old does not, and even a 7-year-old, they don't need multiple extracurricular things. Even if they love them. Now, if it's working for your family, great, but it kind of sounds like something's off. So, could you do one for a season and then switch? Maybe you could just do swim lessons for now and then you do BMX. I can't answer this for you, but I can tell you that we're feeling this is a roots problem, big time. So we need to identify what everyone's needs are. I'm going to say, actually, just my gut says this is a roots problem for mom and a trunk problem for the kids, is what I'm going to say. Your needs are not feeling met and their rhythm is feeling interrupted. And so we need to identify everybody's pieces here so that we can find something that's working. That's going to be my gut there. All right. Next question. How can a mom of a child with PDA in burnout get into a routine? I thrive with a routine, but I've not been able to have one since my daughter went into burnout due to the constant changing landscape. Without a routine, I am not getting anything done. So I don't think you cannot have a routine just because your child isn't in a position to have one. And I know that when you're dealing with PDA or autism or severe anxiety or just healing from anything in general, I know that is going to put a lot of things out of sync and out of whack. But I think you can still have a routine that doesn't have to be a part of your child's routine at all. And remember, a routine and a rhythm are two very different things. So even if your child is in burnout and cannot commit to a daily routine, they are still going to have an identifiable rhythm. They are, if you watch and observe, I guarantee you your child is still doing roughly the same things every day, still seeking your attention at certain moments. There's still going to be natural flows and rhythms that aren't as interrupted, even in a PDA burnout. You cannot force a routine upon them, of course, but you can figure out what their rhythm is so that the routine you need for yourself, you can build around it. Meaning you can find those moments in your daughter's natural flow where she maybe doesn't need much of your attention, is being perfectly independent, maybe on a tablet or watching TV or just eating, whatever. And in those moments, you can say that's a great, especially if you've watched for a while and it's predictable, right? Every day from 10 to 11 a.m., roughly, after breakfast, roughly, they're completely independent. That's a really good time for me to say, okay, after we have breakfast in the morning, that's a good time for me to XYZ. So it isn't, I think you're maybe thinking a little bit more schedule than routine. So here, this is what are your needs and what is your daughter's flow and how can you stick your needs into that routine without interrupting her flow, because we don't want to do that in burnout, because that's going to make the burnout last longer by interrupting that natural flow with PDA. So how are we honoring her needs for that just, straight line? That's what we're doing right now. When we're in burnout with PDA, we want to think about a straight line. We're not even worried about diagonal. How do we get through the burnout? When we're on the other side, we can make some adjustments. But for right now, we're figuring out what our daughter's straight line is and how are we sticking our personal needs in and amongst that. All right, last question. I'm really struggling with finding anything that will hold my child's interest. There seems to be not a lot that interests here and nothing that she wants to investigate. Are there strategies to help engage? We do put limits on her tablet, otherwise she'd be on all day. So real quick, I am going to look up this child's age before I give advice. By the way, if you're a Bridge family watching this and you've never submitted a question, there is a separate form on our portal where you can submit a question in advance and I'll answer them every Friday. And they're always anonymous. So we don't announce your name or the child's name or anything. Okay, so this child's 5th grade, low middle school, upper elementary. Okay, let me go back to the question. So this time of year generally is really hard with this anyway. So I'm going to say, because you're asking this question in January, it isn't something that I would stress about. For children, especially younger children, and your child's definitely still on the younger spectrum of this in elementary school, after the holidays, there's almost always a dip in interest and motivation, because the holidays are such a excitement time for young kids, especially, right? And even older kids and even many adults. We're just kind of riding this high of holiday season. And then when it's over, we just kind of crash, and we often can't remember what we were interested in before. And we certainly can't, it takes a while to come out of that. So I would say just at the moment, that's not something that would concern me, purely because of the time of year that you're asking that question in. Now, if you are desiring to, if this has been an issue ongoing, you don't foresee that changing, then there's some things we can do. I would still go back to this routine thing. Almost always when there's an interest issue, it is still going to be, it's probably somewhere in the well, my question to you really would be, before I make assumptions, is there anything else going on? Is your daughter generally just removed completely, or do you find academically they're not interested in anything? So that's something to identify first. Is it just that the interests don't feel academic, therefore you feel like there's nothing? Or is your daughter still very interested in things? It's just not manifesting in the way you're used to? Or is there actually nothing? So that helps you understand, like, is this likely related to some educational trauma? Is there a safety and security issue where she thinks that, is she on to you? Like, does she think that the moment she shows you an interest, you're going to be like, yes, let's go. And it's just going to feel like, this is more than I wanted to do. That's what I mean when I say safety and security. Does it feel safe to share what your interests are without it turning into like this big performance? So I would identify if maybe that's where this is coming from. If not, there are times it is human. We're not going to be interested in learning something all of the time for our entire lives. Sometimes we coast on the things we already know or we already enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that. So in these moments, finding just what can you teach her in everyday life that's still helping her grow, helping her to, can you read books together? You read audiobooks, watch movies together and talk about the stories. What can you, are there something around the house you can teach her, talk about budgeting? Like, in those moments, just lean into real life. What are you doing in real life and what can you invite her to do with you? Bake cookies, have fun. It is okay for kids to not just be interested in something all of the time. In fact, we usually aren't. We're actually less interested in new things, especially as we get older. We tend to just like have those few things that keep our interest, and then we're going to have like, lulls and surges of it, and all of that is okay too. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, I would say going into the What's Wrong with School series that I did would be really helpful if you haven't already watched that, because it's going to talk about the standardization of motivation, what happened with that in the school system, how we've changed that, what motivation and interest actually even is, I think is in like the second video in that series. And then it gets into like how to solve this problem, but also identifying that not being interested in something new all of the time isn't really a problem. That's perfectly normal. And because of the time of year you're asking this question, I just genuinely wouldn't be worried about it. So, okay. That was the last question that came in, and let's see if we had any on Instagram. No questions on YouTube. It like gives me an alert every time someone joins. Okay, am I saving this video? Yes. So this video I will save on Instagram and I'll share it, and then it'll always be saved on YouTube, so you can watch this and all of my previous weekly chats on my YouTube channel. YouTube.com/@yournaturallearner is where you can find that. That's also where you can find the What's Wrong with School 4-part series. It's free for everybody. Just come watch it over on YouTube. The workshop that I've talked about in here, the Aligned Homeschool Routines workshop, if you are a Bridge Academy family, that's already in your portal. If not, I will link that in the YouTube link, and I'll share it on Instagram too later after this all uploads. And I think that's it, guys. I went a little over my time, but that's all right. I like talking and I like that you like to learn. So identify the core needs, roots of the tree, identify connection and natural flow and rhythms. That's the trunk of the tree. The learning is the branches that happens when everything else is fostered, and the leaves are the creativity that you have no control over, but that are just the most beautiful part. Okay. Have a lovely Friday. I will share all of this out via email and everything once YouTube gets it all uploaded. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.